In my last video, I showed you how to install your own well, giving you free water anytime you want. Now that installation included this manual pump, and this thing works great if you're in a cabin or say off-grid, but you guys asked for more. You wanted to see this install done with an electric pump, and that would give you a lot more practical access to the water. You could run lawn sprinklers and a lot more. And in this video, you're going to see how to install an electric pump on a well like this, along with a solar panel and a battery. Here's my manual well that I was starting off with, but I didn't want to get rid of that pitcher pump on top. I wanted the ability to have an electric pump or that manual pump. So to do that, I needed to break into this pipe, and you wouldn't want to cut it because this stuff is pre-threaded. So an easier way would be to install a T onto the top of the pipe, but that would be really high up, and it's going to make an electric pump work that much harder. An easy solution is to drive that pipe in the ground a bit further, and then I can locate the T closer to the ground. And this was the exact same technique I used to install the well itself, except when I did that I was driving in the ground almost 20 feet. Now with the top of the pipe much closer to the ground, I can easily install that T using Teflon tape. And if you're doing this when you first install your well, but you're not ready for the electric pump, you can go ahead and plug off that extra port and use it later. I'm adding this shorter length of pipe to the top of the T along with a shutoff valve. And then on top I'm using an even smaller section of pipe, and that's going to go directly into the pitcher pump. Now all this stuff just threads together using tape or any type of pipe dope, and you want to make sure that everything is tight using 2 wrenches to get everything secure. And here's the finished installation. You can use the pitcher pump anytime you want. You just open the ball valve and then you can pump it as usual. Now I'm ready to begin installing the electric pump, and I'm going to start by removing the plug, and the pipe coming out of the well is 1.25 inches. But I'm using this reducer to bring it down to 1 inch because that's the size of the inlet on the electric pump, and anything bigger isn't really going to be worth it. A big problem you've probably heard about electric pumps is that they lose prime, so you want to make sure that once you get that water in the pipe that it stays there until the pump turns on again. And an easy way to accomplish that is to use something called the check valve. Now this brass one is a lead-free version that's going to help keep that water in the pipe and it won't run down when the pump is off. And for my installation, I wanted to put the pump inside my shed. That's going to help the pump last a lot longer, and it's going to protect it from the elements. So to get it there, I need to connect it using some type of pipe, and using plastic PVC is going to be a lot more affordable, and it's certainly easier to work with. I also wanted to make sure that nothing could easily damage the pipe, so I'm going to run it underground just a little bit to protect it. Another tip is to use one of these shutoff valves, but this one is a combination unit. It's actually a union and a shutoff valve in one, and that's going to allow you to easily take the pipe apart in case you have a problem down the road. Now running this pipe was pretty easy. I just used a hoe to dig out a small trench. Then it was just a matter of laying things out, cutting the pipe and gluing it. And you might also notice that I'm not using any type of PVC cleaner. That stuff is normally purple, but this is actually a combination cement and cleaner in one. With the pipes on the outside run, I now needed to get inside the shed, so I just had to line that pipe up and drill a hole into the shed to put it in. If you watch my lawn care videos, you'll certainly recognize this tool. This thing worked out great for leveling out the area, and I'm going to put down some grass seed later just to make things fill in. I also wanted an easy way to get access to the water once everything was installed. I could have just used a regular outdoor garden tap, but I went for something better. This is an Aqua quick disconnect tap. You've seen me use these in other videos, but it's going to be perfect for this install because it's not only going to look better, it gives me the ability to completely remove it when I'm not going to use the well system. Installing this was really easy. I just had to drill a hole in the front of my shed, and then I could attach the faucet. Now this one installs a bit differently because that cover actually goes behind the faucet itself, and then it kind of sandwiches in with the screws that hold everything in place. The finished install looks really cool from the outside, and when you don't attach the faucet, it's a super low profile. Now I need to connect the outdoor faucet to the pump, and for that, I'm going to use this 1/2 inch PEX tubing. This stuff is really easy to work with, it's cheap, and for this application, this is the only size I'm going to need. And I don't want to damage that pipe when I'm using the shed, so I'm actually going to run it inside the studs. To help me keep the pipe straight, I could have made measurements from the floor, but this laser level makes it a lot easier. This thing is cheap and it really gets the job done fast. Now using that laser level as a guide, I just had to drill the holes, then I could pull the pipe all the way through, and I just needed to connect it up to the back of the Aqua. And I could have used a barbed fitting, but I just used the SharkBite fitting instead, and the pipe just connects right in. Now we're ready to install the pump. I wanted to put it in the back part of my shed so that I wouldn't lose too much space. And if you're ever going to put any type of a pump inside of a structure, I highly recommend installing some type of a drain pan. And this isn't anything fancy, it's just a boot tray. And to make it even better, I'm installing a drain into the bottom of the tray. Now this might seem like overkill, but down the road, if you have a leak, you don't want that water pouring onto the wood. Now it's going to go out the bottom of the shed, and I won't have to worry about it at all. The drain was just a leftover piece of pipe that I had. And now we're ready for the pump. The one I'm using here I got at Harbor Freight. This has a 1 horsepower motor and it has that small tank attached, and that can hold 2.5 gallons of water. Now I needed to connect the pump up to the inlet on the well, and to do that I just needed to cut the pipe and line everything up. The inlet and outlet on this pump are 1-inch threaded. That means you can connect them to pretty much anything. I'm going to use 1 inch to go right to the well, and then I use an adapter to go to that SharkBite, and that's what's going to feed the outside faucet. Now I just needed to cut and glue the pipe that's coming in from the well into my pump, and insert that end of the PEX that's going out to the Aqua faucet. I also added some screws to the front side of the pump just to make sure that nothing would vibrate loose. Because I don't have any electricity in the shed, I'm going to power this thing using this EcoFlow Delta Max. I reviewed this unit in a previous video, and this thing should have more than enough power to run this well, along with some lights that I'm going to install in the shed. Now I'm ready to try out the new pump, so I started by using the manual pitcher pump just to make sure the water was flowing out. Then I closed off the valve to the pump. The reason you're closing that valve is you don't want to be pulling in air into that electric pump. And with that red valve open, now we've got the water line connected between this electric pump and the well, but we've still got to prime it. So this pump is done by removing that small plug and filling it with water. Now I can turn the pump's power on. This is definitely good news. It's the very first time I ran this pump, and you can see that the water is coming out fine. There's a bunch of air in the line, and it's going to work its way out, but I did notice that the pressure still seemed a little bit low. So fortunately there's some settings on the pump that you can mess with to boost it. Comes to the factory set to around 30 psi, and I changed it to about 40, and that does make a big difference in the flow. I also got a lot of questions asking if one of these pumps could run a lawn sprinkler, so I went ahead and connected one up. And this is the DI one that I built in one of my earlier videos, and this thing worked just fine, and you could definitely use one of these to water your lawn. This hose on the ground was kind of a mess, and I wanted to be able to run the water a lot further when I wanted it. So I went for another upgrade. This is a HoseLink hose reel, and I put one of these in a previous video, and it worked really well. And mounting it on the shed was really easy. They give you the stainless steel hardware in the box, and once you've got the bracket secure, you just set the hose reel into position. And using a reel like this has a bunch of advantages. First off, it's 82 feet long, and it's going to let you run a hose pretty much all over your yard, but it also folds flat against the shed when you're not using it, so it doesn't really stand out. And because I'm using the Aqua adapter, I didn't need to use these quick disconnects they give you in the box, but I did go ahead and put them on the end of the hose. Now I can use this hand sprayer that they give you, but if I want to connect my lawn sprinkler, I just give them a twist, and now I can plug my sprinkler in whenever I want and switch back to the sprayer when I'm done. But you might still be thinking, what happens when this battery runs out, and how am I going to run my pump? Well, the good news is you can plug solar panels right into one of these devices. So I went ahead and set up one of these 400 watt solar panels outside. Now I built this stand out of PVC, and I was going to do a separate video on it, but I really wasn't happy with how it came out. It is holding the panel up okay, but I think for long-term use I could have done a better job, and once I've got it updated, I'll release a separate video. If you were doing a setup like this for a cabin or off-grid, you want to use a glass panel and probably mount it on a stand or the roof. The best part about these solar generators is they're really easy to use. In this case, you just plug the solar panel into the connector and then it goes right into the back of the unit. Now this device is the EcoFlow Delta Max, and what's great about it is it's totally automatic. You plug your solar panels in the back, it handles all the charging for you, and you use the power just like it's plugged into a wall outlet. Adding this pump to the well made a huge difference, because now when I go to that tap, it's just like I'm on city water, except one difference. I'm never paying for the water, and with the solar panel and battery generator, I'm not even paying for the electricity. Now you could do all sorts of things with this. You might just have a shed like I do, or you're going to build an off-grid cabin. But hopefully this video was helpful, maybe inspired you with some ideas, and there's many ways you could do this project and adapt it to your own needs. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already for more videos coming up.